Why do certain desires completely take over your mind and body? Alan Watts explored the profound connection between our deepest urges and spiritual awakening. In his explorations of Eastern philosophy, Watts suggested something revolutionary about those powerful physical longings that seem impossible to ignore. What if these intense feelings aren't just biological impulses, but doorways to spiritual transformation? Throughout history, spiritual leaders have viewed these desires differently than most people imagine. What if you're experiencing these urges not as a random biological process, but as part of a greater spiritual journey? In this video, I'll reveal what Watts discovered about the hidden spiritual dimension of physical desire and why understanding this perspective could completely transform how you experience your most powerful urges. After watching this, you'll see the battle happening within you, not as something to be ashamed of, but as the final test that reveals your true spiritual potential. Most people go through life never questioning why they feel what they feel. You wake up every day, experience cravings, urges, and powerful desires that seem to come from nowhere. These forces can sometimes feel so overwhelming that they take over your entire being. But what if there's something deeper happening? Alan Watts discovered something profound about our strongest desires. They aren't random, they aren't meaningless, and most importantly, they aren't just biological. When that powerful longing takes hold of you, something much more significant is happening beneath the surface. The modern world has taught us to see our desires as either biological necessities or shameful urges to be suppressed. Both views miss the deeper truth. What Watts revealed through his studies of Eastern wisdom is that these powerful feelings serve a spiritual purpose that most people never discover. Think about how strange desire truly is. It appears in your consciousness, sometimes against your will, and suddenly your entire focus shifts. Your body responds, your mind becomes fixated, your priorities instantly change. This isn't just chemistry at work. It's a spiritual mechanism designed to test you, to transform you, to reveal something about your true nature. Throughout history, spiritual traditions have recognized this connection. From ancient tantric practices to Taoist wisdom, the understanding that our most powerful urges contain spiritual energy has been known by those seeking enlightenment. Watts brought this wisdom to the Western world, explaining that when we experience intense desire, we're actually encountering a force that connects us to something greater. The problem is that most people misinterpret what's happening. They either indulge the desire mindlessly or fight against it with guilt and shame. Both approaches miss the opportunity for transformation. The desires themselves aren't the problem. It's our relationship to them that determines whether they become a spiritual trap or a doorway to awakening. What makes Watt's perspective so revolutionary is that it completely reframes what you're experiencing. Those moments when desire seems overwhelming aren't failures of willpower or signs of weakness. They're spiritual crossroads where you're being invited to wake up to a deeper reality about yourself. This understanding changes everything. Instead of being a victim of your desires, you become a conscious participant in a spiritual process. The intensity of the feeling isn't meant to overwhelm you, it's designed to get your attention, to wake you up from the trance of everyday existence. When you feel that powerful pull, your body is actually revealing something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. The energy that flows through you in those moments is the same energy that flows through all of creation. Learning to recognize this connection is the first step towards spiritual transformation. The challenge is that our culture has lost this wisdom. We've been conditioned to see our desires as either meaningless biological impulses or as moral failings to overcome. Both perspectives keep us trapped in cycles of indulgence and shame, never discovering the transformative potential hidden within our deepest urges. Watts invites us to step outside this limited understanding and see our desires from a higher perspective. From this vantage point, even the most overwhelming feelings become opportunities for awakening. The very intensity that seems to threaten your control is actually an invitation to discover who you really are beyond the limited self that feels controlled or out of control. This doesn't mean indulging every desire that arises. It means developing a new relationship with desire itself, one that recognizes its spiritual dimension. When you feel that powerful energy moving through you, you're experiencing something that connects you to the deepest mysteries of existence. The truth is that your desires aren't random accidents or cruel tests. They're doorways to understanding your true nature. The question isn't whether to suppress them or indulge them. The question is whether you can remain conscious enough to recognize what they're revealing about who you really are. In the following sections, we'll explore how to transform your relationship with desire, turning what seems like a spiritual attack into an opportunity for a profound awakening. The journey begins with recognizing that there's more happening in those intense moments than most people ever realize. 2. The spiritual battlefield within your body. Your body is not just flesh and bone. According to Alan Watts, it's the arena where the most important spiritual battle of your life takes place. Every sensation, every urge, every powerful desire that courses through you is part of an ancient spiritual testing ground that few people ever recognize. When that overwhelming feeling takes hold of you, what's really happening? Most people believe they're simply experiencing a biological urge, a chemical reaction, or a psychological response. But Watts discovered something much deeper through his exploration of Eastern wisdom traditions. The sensations that move through your body are actually spiritual energies, testing your level of consciousness. These feelings aren't random. They're precisely calibrated challenges designed to reveal your true spiritual nature. The more powerful the feeling, the more significant the spiritual test. Think about how these intense desires affect you. They seem to take over your mind, cloud your judgment, and redirect your attention. This isn't accidental. These powerful feelings are designed to reveal something crucial about your relationship to consciousness itself. In many Eastern traditions, the body is understood as a vessel for spiritual energy. The Taoists call this energy chi, while yoga traditions refer to it as prana or kundalini. Watts brought these concepts to Western audiences, explaining that the powerful urges we feel are actually manifestations of this spiritual energy moving through us. What makes these energies feel so overwhelming is that they're not just physical sensations. They are spiritual forces that connect us to something larger than ourselves. When desire takes hold, you're not just experiencing a bodily reaction. You're encountering a force that connects you to the entire cosmos. The battlefield is within your body, but the war is spiritual. The real question isn't whether you'll give in to a particular desire or resist it. The question is whether you'll remain conscious enough to recognize what's really happening beneath the surface of that feeling. Most people spend their entire lives caught in cycles of indulgence and guilt, never realizing that there's a deeper dimension to what they're experiencing. They either surrender to their desires without awareness or fight against them with judgment and shame. Both approaches miss the opportunity for spiritual transformation. Watts explained that true spiritual growth doesn't come from either suppressing desires or mindlessly following them. It comes from developing a new relationship with the energy itself, one that recognizes its spiritual nature and works with it consciously. This battlefield within your body becomes a training ground for spiritual awakening. Each powerful urge that arises presents an opportunity to practice presence, awareness, and conscious relationship with the energy of life itself. The challenge isn't to win or lose the battle, but to transform your understanding of what's happening. The physical sensations that seem most overwhelming are actually the ones that offer the greatest potential for spiritual growth. When desire feels strongest, the spiritual energy is at its peak, creating the perfect conditions for awakening if you can remain conscious through the experience. Many spiritual traditions have recognized this. Tantric practices work directly with desire as a pathway to enlightenment. Taoist inner alchemy transforms bodily energies into spiritual awareness. Watts brought these ancient understandings to modern audiences, showing how the body's most intense experiences can become doorways to the sacred. The spiritual battlefield within you isn't about fighting against your nature. It's about recognizing the true nature of what's moving through you. Those powerful feelings that seem to threaten your peace are actually invitations to discover a deeper peace that can't be threatened by any feeling, no matter how intense. When you feel that overwhelming energy moving through your body, you're experiencing something that connects you to the very source of creation. The challenge is to remain conscious enough to recognize this connection rather than being swept away by the intensity of the feeling. In the next sections, we'll explore how to transform this battlefield into a temple, a sacred space where the very energies that once seemed like attacks become pathways to your highest spiritual potential. The journey continues as we discover how to work consciously with these powerful forces. If you feel ready to dive deeper into your own mind and balance both your light and shadow, explore the Sim Method ebook. It's a practical guide that helps you awaken your inner strength in just 5 minutes a day. Link is waiting for you in the first pinned comment. 3. The masters behind your strongest urges. Who's really pulling the strings when you feel that overwhelming desire? Most people never question where these powerful feelings come from. They assume their desires are simply part of being human, random biological impulses, or psychological responses. But Alan Watts uncovered a more profound truth. According to Watts' exploration of Eastern wisdom traditions, our strongest urges are actually orchestrated by spiritual forces that most people never recognize. These aren't random feelings. They are carefully designed experiences meant to test your level of consciousness and reveal your spiritual potential. In many Eastern traditions, there's an understanding that unseen forces influence our experiences. The Duas speak of spiritual energies that flow through all things. Buddhist teachings describe realms of existence beyond the physical. Hindu traditions recognize devas and other spiritual beings that interact with human consciousness. Watts brought these concepts to Western audiences, suggesting that our most powerful desires might have sources beyond what we typically recognize. Think about how mysterious desire truly is. It arises in your awareness, seemingly from nowhere. It wasn't there one moment, and suddenly it's the most important thing in your consciousness. The intensity feels almost supernatural, and according to Watts, that's because it often is. The masters behind your strongest urges aren't cruel beings trying to make you suffer. They're more like spiritual teachers, using the language of your body to communicate important truths. Every powerful desire that moves through you is actually a message, a teaching, a spiritual communication designed to wake you up to deeper realities. These spiritual forces work through your body's natural energies. They don't create artificial feelings. They amplify and direct the natural energies that already flow through you. This is why the feelings seem so authentic, so genuinely part of you. They are part of you, but they're being orchestrated by something beyond your ordinary awareness. What makes these experiences so challenging is that they touch the most vulnerable parts of your being. They know exactly where your awareness is weakest, where you're most likely to lose consciousness and react automatically. This isn't meant to torture you, it's meant to show you precisely where you need to develop greater spiritual awareness. The masters behind your urges are testing you, but not to make you fail. They're revealing exactly what you need to see about yourself to grow spiritually. Each overwhelming desire is actually a customized spiritual lesson designed specifically for your development. Watts explained that these spiritual forces aren't separate from the universe itself. They're aspects of the same divine intelligence that flows through all things. When you feel that powerful urge, you're actually experiencing the universe itself communicating with you through the language of your body. Most people spend their lives either fighting against these forces or surrendering to them without awareness. Both approaches miss the opportunity for genuine spiritual growth. The real invitation is to develop a conscious relationship with these spiritual masters, to recognize them as teachers rather than enemies or mere sources of pleasure. This perspective completely transforms how you experience desire. Instead of being a victim of random urges or a failing moral agent constantly battling temptation, you become a spiritual student receiving precisely the lessons you need for your evolution. The very feelings that once seemed like attacks become recognized as sophisticated teachings tailored specifically for you. What makes this understanding so powerful is that it removes both shame and mindless indulgence from the equation. When you recognize the spiritual dimension of your desires, you can approach them with reverence and awareness rather than judgment or unconscious reactivity. The masters behind your urges aren't trying to make you sin or suffer. They're trying to wake you up to who you really are beyond the limited self that experiences desire. The intensity of the feeling is designed to get your attention to create an opportunity for awakening that might not be possible through more subtle means. In traditional spiritual paths, students often spent years preparing to work consciously with these energies. The teachings were kept secret not to hide them, but because they required proper preparation to be truly transformative rather than merely indulged or suppressed. Watts brought these esoteric understandings to modern audiences, suggesting that we don't need to become monks or yogis to benefit from this wisdom. We simply need to develop a new relationship with our experience, one that recognizes the spiritual dimension of our most powerful. As we continue our exploration, we'll discover how to transform your relationship with these spiritual masters, turning what once seemed like attacks into opportunities for profound awakening and transformation. The journey deepens as we learn to communicate consciously with the forces behind our most powerful urges. For breaking free from the cycle of desire, you've felt it before, that moment when desire finally releases its grip on you. The overwhelming urge that seems so important suddenly dissolves, and you're left wondering why it ever had such power over you. According to Alan Watts, these moments offer a glimpse into spiritual freedom that most people never fully explore. The cycle of desire has a predictable pattern. First comes the urge, powerful, compelling, seemingly impossible to resist. Then, if you follow the desire, comes momentary satisfaction, followed quickly by emptiness or craving for more. If you resist, there's struggle, tension, and often eventual surrender anyway. Either way, the cycle continues, keeping you trapped in patterns that limit your spiritual growth. Watts discovered that breaking free from this cycle isn't about either perfect resistance or complete indulgence. It's about transforming your relationship with desire itself. The key insight from Eastern wisdom traditions is that desire isn't something to be conquered or surrendered to, it's something to be understood from a higher level of consciousness. Most spiritual teachings focus on controlling desires through discipline and restraint. While these approaches have value, Watts pointed to a more profound possibility. What if you could experience desire fully without being controlled by it? What if the energy of desire itself could be transformed into spiritual awareness? The breakthrough comes when you recognize that you are not your desires. The feelings move through you, but they aren't you. This simple but profound shift in perspective creates space between your awareness and the powerful feelings that arise. In that space, freedom becomes possible. Eastern traditions offer various practices for breaking the cycle. Meditation helps you observe desires without being controlled by them. Tantric approaches work directly with desire energy, transforming it into spiritual awareness. Taoist inner alchemy channels these energies through the body in ways that lead to spiritual awakening rather than depletion. What makes Watt's approach unique is that he didn't advocate renunciation or asceticism. He suggested that breaking free from the cycle doesn't require rejecting the world or denying our humanity. Instead, it involves experiencing our humanity fully, but from a different level of consciousness. Think about how desire actually works. It promises that satisfaction lies in obtaining some object, experience, or person. But when you look closely, you discover that the moments of greatest satisfaction often come not from getting what you want, but from the cessation of wanting itself. This insight points to a profound truth. Peace isn't found in fulfilling desires, but in transcending the cycle of desire altogether. The path to freedom begins with honest observation. Watch how desires arise in your awareness. Notice how they create a sense of lack, a feeling that something is missing that needs to be filled. Recognize how getting what you want provides only temporary satisfaction before the cycle begins again. This isn't just psychological insight, it's spiritual reconnaissance, gathering intelligence about how these energies operate in your consciousness. Breaking free doesn't happen through force of will. It happens through clear seeing. When you recognize the cycle for what it is, a pattern of energy moving through your awareness, rather than a command that must be obeyed, something shifts. The desire doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it transforms. Watts explained that true freedom comes not from having no desires, but from no longer being controlled by them. The desires still arise. They're part of being human, but they no longer dictate your choices or define your sense of self. They become more like weather, passing through the sky of your awareness. Interesting, sometimes intense, but not ultimately defining who you are. This freedom isn't achieved overnight. It develops gradually as you practice conscious relationship with desire. Each time you notice a powerful urge arising, you have an opportunity to practice presence, to observe without immediate reaction, to recognize the energy as separate from your essential self. What makes this approach so powerful is that it doesn't require perfect self-control, which few people ever achieve. Instead, it focuses on developing awareness, which is available to everyone in any moment. Even when you follow a desire, you can do so consciously, observing the entire process and learning from the experience. The cycle breaks not through perfect behavior, but through perfect awareness. As your consciousness expands, you begin to recognize that what you truly seek isn't the object of desire, but the peace that comes when desire subsides. This recognition points toward your true nature, the awareness within which all desires arise and pass away. In the next sections, we'll explore how this freedom from the cycle of desire opens the door to spiritual awakening, transforming what once seemed like attacks into opportunities for profound realization. The journey continues as we discover how to awaken the spirit through the very energies that once seemed to trap us. 5. Transforming attack into spiritual growth. What if the very force that seems to attack you spiritually is actually the key to your awakening? This profound paradox lies at the heart of Alan Watts' teachings on desire and spiritual growth. The energy that appears most threatening to your spiritual journey might actually be its most powerful catalyst. Most spiritual traditions teach that desires are obstacles to be overcome. They pull us toward the material world and away from spiritual realization. But Watts discovered a more nuanced truth. In Eastern wisdom, these powerful energies aren't obstacles. They're opportunities disguised as challenges. The transformation begins when you stop seeing desire as an enemy. That overwhelming feeling that seems to attack your spiritual resolve isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to wake you up. The intensity of the feeling is precisely what makes it valuable as a spiritual tool. Think about how spiritual growth actually happens. Real transformation doesn't come from comfortable experiences that confirm what you already believe. It comes from challenges that force you to develop new awareness, new understanding, new capabilities. Your strongest desires provide exactly this kind of transformative challenge. Watts explained that spiritual attacks are actually invitations to deeper awareness. When desire arises with overwhelming force, it creates a perfect opportunity to observe how your consciousness works, how you identify with feelings, how you get caught in patterns of reaction. This observation is the beginning of freedom. Eastern traditions offer various practices for transforming these energies. In tantric approaches, the energy of desire isn't rejected but consciously channeled towards spiritual awakening. Taoist inner alchemy works with these same forces. directing them through energy centers in the body to nourish spiritual development rather than deplete it. What makes these practices powerful is that they work with the energy rather than against it. Instead of trying to suppress desire through willpower, which rarely works for long, they transform the energy by changing your relationship to it. The force remains powerful, but its direction and effect are completely different. The key insight is that desire energy and spiritual energy are not separate forces. They're the same fundamental energy expressing in different ways. When you learn to work consciously with this energy, what once seemed like an attack becomes recognized as spiritual fuel for your awakening. This transformation isn't about becoming perfect or never feeling desire. It's about developing a new relationship with the energy itself, one based on awareness rather than reaction, conscious choice rather than automatic behavior, spiritual understanding rather than moral judgment. Most people never discovered this possibility. They remain caught in cycles of indulgence and guilt, never realizing that the very energy causing their struggle could become their greatest ally in spiritual growth. The shift happens not by changing the energy itself, but by changing how you relate to it. When desire arises powerfully, most people either try to escape it through suppression or surrender to it through indulgence. Both approaches miss the opportunity for transformation. The middle path is to stay present with the energy, to feel it fully without being controlled by it, to recognize its spiritual potential rather than just its physical expression. Watts pointed out that this approach requires courage. It's easier to follow established rules of suppression or indulgence than to develop a new, conscious relationship with powerful energies. But this courage is rewarded with genuine transformation rather than endless cycles of struggle. The practice is simple but profound. When you feel that overwhelming desire, pause. Rather than immediately reacting, turn your attention to the feeling itself. Notice its qualities, its intensity, its movement through your awareness. Recognize that this energy, while powerful, is not who you are. It's something moving through the field of your consciousness. This simple act of conscious attention begins to transform the energy. What was unconscious becomes conscious. What was automatic becomes a matter of choice. What seemed like an attack becomes an opportunity for awakening. The very intensity that once overwhelmed you now serves your spiritual growth. Eastern wisdom traditions have understood this principle for thousands of years. The spiritual path isn't about escaping the challenges of human experience. It's about transforming how we relate to those challenges. Desire isn't excluded from this transformation. It's central to it. What makes Watt's teaching so revolutionary is that it offers liberation not through perfect behavior but through perfect awareness. You don't need to become a saint who never feels desire. You simply need to develop the consciousness that can work with desire energy skillfully, transforming what once seemed like spiritual attacks into fuel for awakening. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It develops through practice, through countless moments of bringing conscious awareness to experiences that were previously unconscious. Each time you pause in the face of powerful desire, you strengthen your capacity for transformation. As we move to our final section, we'll explore how this transformation of desire leads to a new understanding of intimacy, one that integrates the physical and the spiritual in a profound union that transcends ordinary experience. The journey culminates in discovering how transformed desire creates possibilities for sacred connection that most people never experience. 6. Finding sacred connection beyond desire. What lies on the other side of transformed desire? According to Alan Watt, something far more profound than most people ever experience. A sacred connection that unites the physical and spiritual in perfect harmony. This isn't just another form of pleasure. It's an entirely different dimension of intimacy. Most people spend their lives caught between two extremes. either pursuing physical pleasures that never fully satisfy or seeking spiritual connection by denying their physical nature. Watts discovered a middle path in Eastern wisdom traditions, the possibility of sacred connection that embraces both the physical and spiritual aspects of our being. This sacred connection emerges naturally when desire has been transformed rather than either indulged or suppressed. It's not something you achieve through technique or effort. It's what remains when the cycle of ordinary desire has been transcended through spiritual awareness. Think about the limitations of ordinary desire. It focuses on obtaining something outside yourself, a person, an experience, a feeling. It creates separation between the one who desires and what is desired. It perpetuates a sense of lack, a feeling that something is missing. Sacred connection transcends these limitations entirely. Watts explained that in this sacred space, there's no separation between you and what you experience. The boundary between self and other dissolves, revealing a profound unity that was always there beneath the surface of separate existence. This isn't metaphorical, it's a direct experience that transforms how you relate to everything. Eastern traditions have many names for this experience. In tantric approaches, it's called mathuna, the union of masculine and feminine energies that transcends ordinary pleasure. In Taoist traditions, it's the harmony of yin and yang energies flowing together in perfect balance. In Zen, it's the direct experience of non duality that reveals the illusion of separate self. What makes this sacred connection so different from ordinary experience is that it doesn't depend on getting something you lack. It arises from recognizing what's already present when the veils of separation fall away. It's not about fulfilling desire, but about discovering what exists beyond desire's limited perspective. The path to this sacred connection isn't about becoming more spiritual by rejecting the physical. It's about recognizing that the physical itself is already spiritual when experienced with full awareness. Your body isn't an obstacle to spiritual realization, it's a vehicle for it when approached with the right understanding. Most spiritual traditions emphasize transcending the physical to reach the spiritual. Watts pointed to a more integrated approach, the possibility of experiencing the spiritual through the physical rather than despite it. This doesn't elevate physical pleasure as the ultimate goal. It transforms physical experience into a gateway to something far more profound. Sacred connection has qualities that ordinary experience lacks. There's a timelessness to it, a sense of stepping outside the usual flow of moments into a more expansive present. There's a completeness to it, a feeling that nothing is missing, nothing needs to be added or taken away. There's a sacredness to it, a recognition of the divine nature of experience itself. This connection isn't limited to particular relationships or circumstances. It becomes a way of relating to all of life. The same awareness that transforms intimate connections extends to how you experience nature, art, work, and everyday activities. Everything becomes an opportunity for sacred connection when approached with awakened consciousness. Watts emphasized that this sacred dimension isn't something exotic or separate from ordinary life. It's the deeper reality of life itself, available in any moment when awareness penetrates beyond the surface appearances of separation. It doesn't require special conditions, only special attention. The journey to this sacred connection begins with honest recognition of where you are now. Most people fluctuate between craving and aversion, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, pursuing desire and feeling guilty about it. This honest assessment isn't about judgment. It's about establishing a starting point for transformation. From this starting point, the path unfolds through conscious relationship with desire rather than automatic reaction to it. Each time you bring awareness to powerful feelings without being controlled by them, you strengthen your capacity for sacred connection. Each moment of presence in the face of desire builds the foundation for a new way of experiencing life. What makes this approach so powerful is that it doesn't require rejecting any part of your humanity. It doesn't ask you to become something other than what you are. It invites you to discover the sacred dimension of your existing nature through transformed awareness rather than changed behavior. Sacred connection isn't something you achieve once and possess forever. It's a living reality that deepens through continued practice, through countless moments of choosing presence over reaction, awareness over automaticity, conscious relationship over unconscious habit. The journey doesn't end. It continuously unfolds into ever deeper dimensions of sacred experience. As we conclude our exploration, remember that what initially appeared as a spiritual attack was actually an invitation to this sacred connection. The very energies that seemed most challenging contain the seeds of your deepest awakening. Through conscious transformation of desire, what once separated you from spiritual reality becomes a bridge to experiencing its most profound depths.